Well, do we take our freedom for granted in America? Will America always be the land of the free and the home of the brave? And what do we need to do as a collective society to ensure that America stays free? Well, we'll answer those questions today as our special series continues, American Values at the Crossroads. Welcome to our national radio audience and our television audience at malcolmaloud.tv. And, you know, I've broken it down into three areas of discussion today to keep it lively and interesting. So let me tell you what they are. The first is the ultimate sacrifice. What is the ultimate sacrifice, yeah? And then, I love this one, I don't get involved in politics. Like, how many times have you heard that in your life, right? And finally, understanding and honoring the U.S. Constitution. What is the Constitution? And we'll dive into that a little bit as well. So our panel discussion, Freedom Isn't Free, starts right now. Get involved, get loud, and think on the brink. So let me introduce to, just on my side here, Brent South. And Brent is United States Army 1st Ranger Battalion. He's one of 13 to receive a Combat Infantryman's Badge for Desert Storm. I love this. Brent was that guy in the military, the one in the right place at the right time for many once-in-a-lifetime opportunities and experiences. And I said to him just before we came on, and challenges, I am sure. I've read his piece on it, his bio a bit, and love his story. And what he's had to come through and endure. We'll talk about that today. He was awarded also the Order of St. Michael, ARCOM with V device, and 2 air medals, and a host of other achievements I can't possibly get into. We'd spend an hour talking about him. And Pastor Jim Harris, right to his side, leads the church service every Sunday for the last 25 years. And here at Riverview Heights Baptist Church, where we are on location today. He serves as Vice President of Blessed Hope Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to producing biblical materials, books, and CDs. Pastor Harris educates Americans on the U.S. Constitution with a special lecture entitled An Evening with the Founders. And I really like that. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard from Colonel Warshuk that he really, really enjoyed it, which is how we put us both together, in fact, Pastor. So it's good to have you here as well. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you both for being here. I'll read this quote to you. Without the brave efforts of all the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines and their families, this nation, along with our allies around the world, would not stand so boldly, shine so brightly, and live so freely. And who said those words? Lane Evans. And I just love it when you read something like that. You get the sense of what this country is about. Listen, I'm about as patriotic as one can get. There's no question about it. I just think when you live in the greatest country in the world, you have to acknowledge that and appreciate what we stand for. And I still believe there's a lot to look forward in this country and a lot of greatness ahead. It's not all doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be. So I want to start here. Do we take our freedom for granted in America? And I want to start with that question. And let me start right here, Brent, with you. Since you've served in the military, you understand, you've put the sacrifice out there every day. Do you get a sense that we are taking our freedom for granted in America?
I believe so. There's a lot of different aspects that you look at when you start talking about the freedom in itself, whether it's a personal freedom or whether it's a freedom as far as a country. My personal belief is, keeping those inside, those personal beliefs inside, they're great, but at the same time, you have to exercise those same rights. Mm-hmm. And if people are keeping them internal all the time, there's no benefit outside of your micro system.
Right.
It's difficult to try and explain or try to give to someone else that they are free, or a lot of people that I talk to, mm-hmm. they hold it in and they don't let it out.
Well, because when the next generation's born and you're raised in this world, you're raised in this country, you don't know any different. You don't know what the streets of Syria are like. You don't know what the streets of Iraq are. You just simply don't know. You don't have anything to compare to, and unless you really dive into that, and let's face it, the young generation's not really diving into it.
It comes from a sense of entitlement, and that's what if you look at it from a larger perspective. That's where it comes from. It comes from that sense of entitlement, and give me what's the next thing Give me something new. I want.
Well, I'm worried about this, and Pastor, Pastor Jim, I'm worried about it for a lot of reasons. That I think we're not paying attention. I think the young people aren't paying attention. We take too much for granted in this country, and I believe. And I always say to people that, you need to. My mantra on this show has always been: get involved, get loud.
I could not agree more with you. The further you get from an event in history, the less impact it has on your memory and your behavior. And our history takes us back to 1776, and that was a long time ago. And what parents do in moderation, children do in excess. And if our previous generations have let these things slip, current generations are going to let them slip to a greater degree.
Interesting.
And so you assume that what you have, you're always going to have.
Right.
And we fought to get to this point, and there's going to be a battle, maybe not militarily, and hopefully not, but that could be involved. There needs to be a real grassroots understanding of the basic constitutional rights that we have been given. It's a genius document that we don't know anything about.
Right.
But yes, I think we have forgotten where we came from.
Well, we'll dive more into that as well ahead. But I ran across some interesting numbers I want to share with you right now, share with everybody. And I'm sure you know these numbers, Brent, but I think a lot of people don't know, and I was surprised to look at some of them. So according to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, these are the amount of troops we've lost, the amount of soldiers, the amount of troops we've lost in this country. The American Civil War, which is mind-blowing, because here we fought with each other to figure this whole thing out, you know what I mean? But how about 625,000 were lost in that battle? 625,000 lives were lost in order to make America what it is today, you see. How about World War II was next? How about 405,000, 339 something, yeah? Huh? 405,000 in World War II. It was the worst of the worst. And then World War I was next at 116,000. But here's what's interesting, folks. Vietnam War 58,000. Desert Shield and Desert Storm, 148. Now, every life matters, mind you. But look at how the numbers started to change with technology and where America was. Now, with Iraq and Afghanistan, we went back a little bit. We've lost almost 7,000 with those wars. They've been dirty wars for a lot of reasons, right?
Exactly. I mean, you go back to a lot of these other different wars, and there was a definable enemy. Now you're fighting with people that are wearing dishtas, or they're civilians. They look like civilians, and you don't know. And then they walk up, and there's a suicide bomb, and kills 5 people right then and there.
Right. So I guess the question I pose here initially is, do you think the average American can truly appreciate the young men and women who sacrifice so much to defend their freedom? And I wonder if people do really appreciate and understand that sacrifice that we've just touched on, Pastor. But when you look at these numbers, I mean, from your standpoint, Pastor, how could you really understand and appreciate that sacrifice if you haven't lost a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, or somebody that's, close to you? And that, how could you really know?
Well, I don't think you can emotionally. These are broad numbers that are statistics. And so the bigger the number, the more statistical it becomes. Mm-hmm. But now, if you have lost a single son or daughter, that's when it becomes very personal. That's a tragedy. And honestly, when you read those numbers, 600,000 people dying, that is an historical statistic to me. But now, if my son was killed in Afghanistan, that one, no. So as far as making an emotional connection, my heart breaks for every one of those that, they're killed in battle, understand that. But I don't have the personal, intimate connection to that broad figure.
Well, I think also to add on to that is if you take those numbers in context, whether it's World War I or World War II, yes, the population within the United States. So maybe there was 150 million people in the United States, and say there's 600,000 casualties, that people that lost their lives. Well, now there's 350, 400 million, but yet there's only less than 1% of active duty military personnel that serve and do these type things. So the reach and the availability for you to touch someone that you know, or a friend of a friend of a friend, it's difficult at best.
That is an excellent point. And I looked at those numbers, actually, the numbers of where our population was at that time. It's interesting to see what that population was. It changed drastically. And so, the percentage to that. So it becomes more remote that somebody that has definitely been impacted. When we talk about, and I took on this topic, freedom isn't free, how I have to start with our military. How can you not start with our military? Where would we be as a country, you know? And, you know, it takes a special person, I think, and I want to get, Brent, your feelings on this, but my thinking is that it takes a special person to be willing to lay down their life. And I remember back at the Vietnam War and some of the early conversation there was a lot of conversation about the draft dodgers and people who would run from whatever the case is, you know, which is not what we talk about today here, but really talk about the heroes. But for me, think about the ultimate sacrifice. Think about putting your life out there and laying your life down for your country. I mean, would you do it for your son? Would you do it for your daughter? Would you do it for somebody very close to you? Would you do it for your country? How much do you love your country? Do you love it as much as your children? I mean, that's a real question, you know? And how patriotic are you? And so I ask myself those questions, okay? Now, I didn't serve in the military. Would I have? In a heartbeat, I would have. You know, we weren't in battle. There was nothing really going on that drew me to it, you understand? I grew up very fast in my life, like real fast, doing lots of things, because I figured I needed to do a lot in this world. I was going to get one life, and darn it, I was going to live it. So I had a lot to accomplish in this world. And so for me, I didn't take that journey. But you know what? I'll tell you, Pastor Jim, I'll tell you, Brent, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would lay down my life for this country without giving it a second thought. I would absolutely, if they needed us to be on the front lines, saving this country, there was nothing that would stop me from doing that. You better believe it. I would be the guy you would want out there because I would make sure it gets done without any question. So me probably not serving maybe was an injustice to myself because of that patriotism. Because I think there's nothing more patriotic than really being willing to lay your life down. Look at those numbers right there. Look at those numbers. I mean, if that doesn't get you moving, I don't know what does.
Well, I think also the same patriotic feelings a lot of people in the military feel, but at the same time, one of the things that I will say is it's a change of culture. It has been a significant change of culture. If you go back to World War I, World War II, and through these different events, whether it's through a draft, or now with the all-volunteer Army, it's a definite change of culture. So when you look at nowadays and the military and the ranks that are filled, I have the utmost respect for any of those individuals that sign up for any kind of military service now, because they know, without a doubt, they're going to be in bad guy country.
That's a good point.
And that's going to be very soon. Yeah. When other people were drafted into the military, okay, well, I got drafted and I'm going to go do this, right. or regardless of the situation, and there is no patriotic piece of it that I would say to that. Now, it's an all-volunteer Army. Right. There's not a draft. Right. So that change of culture has definitely changed the patriotic view that I've seen within the American culture.
Interesting, yeah. Let me ask you, give me an example, a moment, of how we might let the men and women who serve this country down. I want to start with you, Pastor. Think about that a moment. Think about us as a collective society. We think about our military. We think about what they put on the front line. And again, this is what I call the ultimate sacrifice. There's nothing, I mean, if you're willing to give up your life, this particular life, the one we know we're in right now, brother. Right. I mean, are you willing to do that? I mean, that's a big question, I guess, for a lot of people. But how do you think we, as far as a collective society, again, how do we let these men and women who serve our country down? Give me an example, you think?
Well, I think one thing that we have done historically with some like the Vietnam veterans, for instance, there was a lack of appreciation culturally for those men. And I saw Vietnam veterans get off the plane and landing in their home airports, and people spit on them. And I think that's one area. There needs to be a tremendous, like Brent's first time I've met this young man, but the appreciation that needs to be revealed, showed, shared, spoken to these guys. Mm-hmm. They're why we can stay home and watch Monday Night Football. They're walking the wall. And that can be done verbally, that can be done visually, that can be done through government, instead of taking benefits away from them, everything. These guys deserve platinum care when they get home, because they're why we're sitting here today enjoying the freedom that we have.
It's a singular reason, because if you remove that component from our history over the last 200 plus years now, there would be no America.
Right, well, we'd be speaking German.
Yeah. I'll add on to that, in a sense of coming from a soldier. In some ways, it is a little embarrassing I didn't serve to have you smack me on the back and say good job.
That.
And having someone come up and say that to me, it feels great. It does.
Right.
For me, as far as a letdown, when I joined the military, I was promised certain things. Hey, we're going to take care of you with this way. We're going to give you pay and benefits. We're going to give you medical.
Right.
We're going to give you these benefits. And now they're taking those benefits away. I signed a contract, and I expect those same things. And now I'm having to fight to get those same benefits. Now, I don't expect someone to come and give me something, someone off the street. I don't expect that. I expect to be granted what was given to me.
With the United States military, our troops should not have to fight for what rightfully they deserve, okay, number one. Two, when the VA scandal hit recently under the current administration and through both administrations, both Republican and Democrat, who I believe have dropped the ball on this and really securing the vets. I was very outspoken about it on national radio about our veterans and that whole scandal, which was mind-boggling. And we only scratched the surface of it, what we covered on that. There was a lot, went pretty deep, Brent, which we can't dive into today because it's not part of this narrative, but it was a big deal. It was a big conversation. There were a lot of pieces to it, and a lot of people didn't get that on the 6 o'clock news, you understand? So you have to really understand what happened was a national tragedy, what happened with the VA scandal. And they made it into a political football, but it was more than that.
Exactly.
Shame.
And who gets hurt in the long run are the people that are under that
Always
care.
Always is. That's exactly it. All right, so as we get to this, before we leave Freedom is Free, I can't lose the opportunity to talk to you about, all right, I want you to put your thinking cap on here. I want you to just tell me here, okay? Be real. Will America always be the land of the free and the home of the brave? Do you feel that in your soul? Do you feel that that's always going to stand, or do you think we're on borrowed time right now? I don't know who wants to go first. I'll just throw that up in the air.
Well, I'll start off by saying I think it will always be. I think it will. Yes, I think it will be that way. I think the large majority will stand on the sideline and let the few sheepdogs go out there and make sure that they are protected, or that they are doing something, they are speaking out loud about their benefits, about what should be done. Not the other 52% or however many that are standing on the sidelines going, half cheering, half, oh no, take that away, or, I want this. So I think that the home of the free and land of the brave type thing, or did I say it backwards? But I think it will always be there, but I think it will be protected by the few.
You said it right. Land of the free and home of the brave.
There we go.
That's it. Could be the home of the brave and land of the free too, buddy. I think they're interchangeable.
Either way, right?
So, do you think we're always this way?
As a pastor, and I've studied Revelation and Daniel enough to know that there is a point in time when every nation will lose their sovereignty, and there will be universal patriotism. There will be a single government. Understand that. But as long as the general course of our country is behind the principles, again, of our founders, and as long as those things are protected, then there's a tremendous chance that we will continue to be the freest corner of the globe. And when that is dropped and substituted with new ideas and new principles, then we're going to lose it. And the knot is starting to loosen even now.
Right.
But that can be tightened up.
Well said, Pastor. I was wondering how you were going to walk that tightrope, but I think you did. And I always wonder because it is in the Bible and it is there, and clearly, I don't think you see America really isn't there at that moment for what happens. I mean, so something has happened, obviously, and we know that. And you get sick to your stomach when you hear that, but there are reasons why that is supposed to be, clearly. So, it is a story, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, quite something, yeah. All right, so this next chapter we're going to do in just a moment, this next piece with you. I don't get involved in politics. It'll be quite interesting. We have a couple of real interesting things coming up. And then after that, the Constitution, which again, the pastor who has a leg up on that should be quite interesting. And with the talk he does, I look forward to that conversation. So again, let me pause just a moment and tell you thanks for being with me again, our radio audience and Malcolm Out Loud audience here. And I want to mention to you that we have a brand new site you can go to, Get Involved, Get Loud. Just getinvolvedgetloud.com. gettinvolved.com. And if you're on national radio and you're driving in the car, you don't have to write that down. Just remember, get involved, get loud. It's our platform, it's our mantra. And from there, you can subscribe to our newsletters, get involved, and get all kinds of things about the production. You'll see my new video book up there, How to Cure the 5 Human Ailments. It's free. And you'll see a whole host of things to be able to go to Malcolm Out Loud TV. It's time to getOutLoud.com. The whole host of other things. You'll find it out right there. So, and again, I want to thank our national sponsors as well, and specifically, let me start with Closets by Design. If you're looking to build one of those closets in your house or office, or you're looking for, they do all kinds of stuff. I had them do a closet, and then they build the kitchen cabinets, and they build, furniture and all kinds of things, bookshelves, and you name it. Anyways, closetsbydesign.com. They're one of the reasons we're here. Go check them out again, and they have a discount in there that you can get as well if you mention Out Loud. So we'll be right back with you right after the break. Thank
you. Get your home organized now with Closets by Design and get 40% off plus free installation. To schedule a free in-home design consultation, call 1-800-BY-DESIGN or visit closetsbydesign.com for more details.
Well, it shouldn't be a bragging point that, I don't get involved in politics, right? As if that makes someone cleaner somehow, huh? No, that makes you derelict of duty in a republic. Liars and panderers in government would have a much harder time of it if so many people didn't insist on their right to remain ignorant and blindly agreeable. Those are fighting words, obviously, and that is a quote. And those are not my words, but I do endorse those words, by the way. And who said that? Guess. Anybody take a shot? No. Our panel?
I have no idea.
Do know.
You know. Okay.
I do know, but I'll not say it.
All right, thank you. Well, you'll see it in a minute. Anybody know from the audience, studio audience? No? Okay. Pastor, who said it?
Bill Maher.
Yeah. Can you believe Bill Maher said that? Yeah. Anyways, don't fall on the floor, folks.
Exactly.
But anyways, it's Bill Maher, yeah. So, and I'm not a big fan of Bill Maher's politics, to let it be said, but I mean, when the man says something good, I acknowledge it. Yeah, what do you want from me? So I like those words because we all have to get involved and engaged in the process.
I've never agreed with Maher.
I've never agreed with Maher, you say?
That's the first time.
That's the first time for everything, man. That's Pastor. Well, let me bring you here, and Pastor Jim Harris is with us again, back at our panel discussion, and Brent South again with us. So let's roll right into this, and I want to talk about the political aspect of this and try to understand a little bit more for all of us here. All right. There are millions of smart and good Americans who, as far as I'm concerned, who have tuned the conversation out. They've turned it off. They don't get involved, and they just really preference to remain ignorant, okay? In whatever capacity. It's a fact. And I guess the first question I want to ask, and this is why I developed this platform, was to get people involved in the process of understanding that it matters, and we all need to be engaged in this process. But am I overshooting this? I don't know. And I want to start, Brent, with you and ask you, should we be concerned with this, and what should we do about it, or can we do about it?
Well, I think it's a very important piece when I've traveled the world, and I've done a lot of research on different things, but when you have people within the United States of America that don't vote, that don't go out there and do these things, but yet in Iraq, I'm sitting there protecting the right of all these national Iraqis to go and dip their finger in purple paint to vote for their elected leaders. But yet we don't have that same thing here. When you go to Mexico and they have a voter identification card that's different than a driver's license. We don't have that here.
Do you think we could dip their heads in purple here if they don't vote?
I wish.
If they don't vote, then we know who they are.
I wish.
So, sorry, be a wise guy. Go ahead, Pastor.
Well, let me take it to the scriptural point of view. Scripture says that we are to know the ordinances of man. We are to know the laws that govern our lives. We're to know the God that governs the universe. And as a Christian, I have a personal obligation to know those laws and statutes that make a difference in my life and that govern my life. And I think I'm derelict in my duty as a Christian if I am not familiar with the laws that have to do with me. So I think it is a biblical obligation to know what is going on in Washington or Tallahassee that governs my life.
Amen. You heard it here first. So that should get the Christians at least on the front lines voting. So I agree with that very much. So this whole thing about tuning it off somehow. And what I believe is fundamentally the corruption of society, because I think the generation is, and I'm not a prude here. I'm not, but they're investing their lives into, again, not for a better thing, but CSI New York, the reality shows, The Biggest Loser, The Bachelor people, the whatever it is, all that crazy stuff. Like their own life isn't satisfying enough, so they got to go watch all this propaganda on television somehow. And people think this is entertainment somehow, which blows my mind, because I can't see anything further from the truth. That is not, to me, it's not entertainment, I think just corrupts your mind with all of this negativity, and there's so much of it out there. It's everywhere you go. And again, I am not a prude, but I mean, this is stuff that I don't understand how that is entertainment. It talks about society. So I just think somehow people have turned the whole conversation off. They're not paying attention, and I'm going to give you all hell out there, because you know why? I think you're always thinking that they're going to take care of things in Washington, that you think that who's ever in the presidency, whoever the Speaker of the House is, whoever the Senator, somehow they're going to take care of things for you. And you know what? I'm afraid that one day when you're home and you hear the boots walking down the street, and they're not of the United States government somehow, you'll rewind the tape and see how wrong you were, my friends. Right. And you say?
Well, I think if you don't study and learn from history, we're going to go right back to that same thing. Right. You look at Great Britain. What did we do? We broke away from Great Britain for a specific reason. We came here for a reason. Well, the same thing. You're turning into the political offices. They're careers now. Those are. Who spends $400 million on a $400,000 a year job? Yeah. Who does that?
Yeah.
I mean,
U.S. government too.
Exactly. So I mean, whether it's a power, whether it's something to hold, it's not. You're not represented by the average man like it was, 200 years ago. That's not how it is nowadays.
No, it never was. I mean, the framers and founders, which we'll talk more on this later. But I mean, there was a reason they got into serve, and it was to serve, get in and get out. Now it's a career. The only time they leave Washington is with an oxygen tank and a wheelchair, brother, and that is a fact. Then we wheel them the hell out of there. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely.
That's right. So,
and the very few go to jail.
Yeah, where they all should be, by the way. But that's a whole other story, most of them, because they're out of control, and we let them out of control. And that's where the power is, and they're looking for power.
The cheating, the corruption, the money.
See, that's why there were two choices for Malcolm. Why Malcolm got out loud with this whole thing was only been 4 years ago, by the way. It was either run for political office or get into the media or use the media as a tool. And I figured if I ran for political office, they'd assassinate me. They'd probably shoot me. You know what I mean? So I thought I'd better use the media.
I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
To run for political office, it costs you $100,000. It
costs a lot of money, man. You got to have deep pockets.
Yep.
Yeah. The average man isn't going to get there, probably, or average woman. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to actually a female president at one point. I'm looking for a Margaret Thatcher kind of gal. So what do you think?
Yeah, or someone from Australia. I mean, I like
you like Australian women?
Well, the Australian is like, listen, if you don't like it, this is what we've been established on.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, get out.
Get out. Well, that's like my art teacher, sixth grade, Mrs. Noonan. She had a ruler. She'd come back and whack you upside the thing. And really, though, she'd whack you upside the head. So you're right, though. And are we out of line?
No, sir. I'm on the same page here.
That's the best. He's on the same page. We're all. See, I had to have him here just for make sure we stay true. All right, man. So I want to talk a moment about this is mind-boggling, but when you look at the record number of people who don't vote in our country, and I wonder a moment here, okay, should this be a requirement or you don't get the perks? So in other words, if you don't vote, you don't get the benefits, you don't get the free stuff, you possibly even pay a small penalty. Now I wonder if that could happen here. Now let me go further and say to you why and what I'm thinking here. There are 22 countries that were recorded as having laws for compulsory voting that are required around the world, and America isn't one of those, by the way. And 11 of these 22 countries are currently enforcing those laws. If an eligible voter does not vote, he or she may be subject to punitive measures such as fines or community service. I love the community service stuff. I'd love to see them out on the streets picking up the trash and putting things away and all. That'd be cool, man. We'd get a lot done there. And so that would be cool. And so when I look here, here's some of the countries that really enforce it. Australia, Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, Singapore are a few of the countries that require voting. It's mandatory there, okay? Now, interestingly, how do you like this? I don't know if you know this. The state of Georgia, right here in the U.S. in 1777, Pastor, right? 10 years before the adoption of the federal Constitution of 1787 required voting. And Every person absenting himself from an election and shall neglect to give in his or their ballot at such election shall be subject to a penalty not exceeding £5, the mode of recovery, and also the appropriation thereof to be pointed out and directed by act of the legislature, provided nevertheless there is a reasonable excuse shall be admitted. Isn't that interesting, huh? So, but isn't that interesting? I didn't know that.
It is.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until just moments ago. I don't know that I would be in favor of mandatory voting. The government has no authority to make the purchase of any product or service mandatory. I think this matter of this health care is...
So you think it should be mandatory?
I do not think it should be
Brent,
mandatory.
what do you think?
I think your character and integrity
So
should...
you play the
that's
cards
what
the way they
drives.
are?
Well, here it is. When you start talking about political exercises as well, now you're talking more government instilling another law on the average person to go out and vote when, you got 52% of people in America that don't pay taxes.
All right, so if you're not voting, all right, that's right. All right, fair enough, fair point. But all right, but if you're not voting, should you be entitled to the same benefits as the guy who is voting and going there and getting up and doing that? Or, it's so easy to vote today as well. You can do it through mail ballots. It's so easy.
Well, you can vote 3-4 times now.
Yeah.
I mean, you really can. I've seen it.
Triple your check.
Yeah,
Brett, come on.
Yeah. But here's another aspect is that, now if you're going to make it mandatory to vote, and let's just take it into context what just happened with Obama letting all these people into America. Now there's 300,000 brand new Democrats.
The illegal immigration. Yeah.
And now they're getting tax returns. And now, so where's the line? Where do we stop that?
Right.
Which brings me to, let me play off of what you just said now. If you're back, and not, since we're talking politics, I want to go here. So if you go back to the 07-08 election, they bust him in with Acorn. They bust him in on this Acorn organization and bought the votes that way. And these people, half of them didn't even know what the whatever, pull the lever, man. I mean, they bought the vote. And they promised them all the free stuff. Not to be funny, guy here, I know I'm being a little political here, but it's a fact. I can't remove the data. Yeah. It's a fact.
Right. And sold his seat in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That pretty?
In a constitutional republic, we don't have a democracy, we have a constitutional republic. That is risky in itself because there are always behaviors that people are going to engage in that you cannot legislate, and I'm afraid that's just part of a free society and a free culture.
Well, Pastor, do we still give them the free benefits?
Well, it's problematic. This benefits thing is problematic to me anyway.
100%. Well, here's another thing that I'll throw out there is just even within the politics itself, the politicians draw their own lines now. So now they say, well, I want those people, and they're going to vote for me. And so now they're going to redraw lines, and it's going to take 2-3 years, and it's going to go into the next election. But then these people are going to be in office, and term limits. And this has been going on for a long time. This is not like it happened just because Obama's in office or because the current president.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, he's just accentuated all of this.
Correct.
That's what's happened here. No, I mean, I can go back and give you 50 different reasons why the Bush administration messed up.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I don't sit and do this with him because he's some Republican.
Exactly.
In fact, I'm a conservative. I don't take relish in the fact I'm a Republican. I mean, that doesn't do a lot for me these days. Nothing. It's just like a Frisbee. They throw it around like it matters somehow. I mean, there is no party that's really represented. In fact, I just studied here just a couple of weeks ago, we talked about on radio, the independent vote in this country is going through the roof. People are going independent. That is the next party. Let's just call it what it is.
I don't think it's going to, I think it'll be a couple more election terms, but yeah, it is going that way.
Huge numbers are going independent. They're leaving Democrats and Republicans alike. Democrats are losing lots right now. They're just not happy with the program. But a lot of Republicans aren't thrilled with it either.
Absolutely.
Nobody's done a great job.
Well, it's because they're also stealing votes from either side.
Yeah, right. Nobody's done a terrific job when it comes down to it, let's face it. We give these people the keys to the door up there. We tell them to please, we just want them to do a good job, take care, and make the bed before you leave, will you? And then get the payout. You've done your work. But they don't even do that.
Right.
They don't even do what they simply need to do. We paid them well. I just think what we really need now is no more comfortable chairs in Washington. That should be the next law. You get the most uncomfortable chairs on the country, on the planet, and put those. And wouldn't that be cool?
An Iron Maiden.
The worst possible chairs. So you can't possibly get comfortable there. We'll pay you decent, right or wrong. But it's like, this is bad.
Here's something I'll put to you is, when have you ever had a job? This job here, let's just say this is your job. You're not gonna upset your audience. You want to keep your job.
I don't care if I do.
You want to keep your job, but if in a political office, you're not going to go out there and start waves and, we're going to change this. I'm going to be gone in 2 years.
Example. I set waves and look forward to that every day. You're using a bad example here, Brent.
But in most people's jobs, you're not going to go in there and stir the pot because you want to keep your job.
Yeah. So most people do it. The average person is doing
absolutely.
That. Yeah, I would not be an example of that because I stir the pot every day, left, right, and center, back, upside down, and you know it. Yeah. But you're right. Most people are not trying to make waves.
Absolutely.
I believe making waves is the thing to do. Yeah. I believe that I am not the quiet one in the room, by any stretch. I want it to be done properly. And listen, I don't have a secondary agenda. My heart is pure. You can see where I'm going. You'll hear my words. This is why I'm rising. This is why our platform is growing, It's why I got into this thing. 4 years. I've only been in this 4 years. Now, I was in corporate boardrooms for 27 years, so they threw me out. No, I left. But I seen a lot of the bright people were in the business community. They weren't in the political office, the politics. And I thought we got to get more of these bright people in politics somehow. Because again, my whole theory here, folks, is that with politics, it's like you can say it doesn't matter, and I don't really talk that business, but politics impacts everything. It impacts your life somehow, whether you like it or not.
It does.
All right, so this whole thing about voting. All right, so I'm with you about, I want a very less government sort of, freedom isn't free. Right. There's a price to pay for all this again. And I think voting is one of those things that should be required of us, I think, to be for a free society, for what America to be America, if we continue to stay home and don't vote. So I have a problem with all the free entitlement things as well. I think most conservatives understand that the erosion of our principles and the erosion of our country is in play right now. And there are a lot of people taking advantage of this. And you can blame this on the entire political spectrum.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. People ask me a lot. I'm going to take a turn here a second. People ask me a lot, do you think President Obama is the Antichrist? I'm going to say this. I'm just going to throw it out there. I say, you're going to hear everything here. You like it, you like it. But they say to me, is he the Antichrist? And I say to them, this is true. I hear it all the time, Brent. I say, Pastor, you and I touched on this briefly. I think in our private conversation one moment, yeah. And he still had me here today. Can you believe that? So, and I said, no, I don't think Barack Obama is the Antichrist, right. But I think he's a cousin. I think he's related to the family. I'm not a fan.
Well, and I could say that about a lot of different politicians in the White House or up in Washington itself.
Amen.
And so again, we just talked. It's not specifically about one specific person.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I agree with that in the sense. Again, it's not just directed at one person.
Well, I love the idea. I'm going to go on the record right now and differ with Jim and Brent both, just for everybody to know. I think we need to have mandatory voting in our country, or you don't get the free stuff. And you just don't get the free stuff. I don't want anybody to suffer, so we don't, or if you do community service and help with that way, then maybe we'll give you the free. I don't know what the trade-off is, but there's got to be a trade-off there. You got to vote. You got to get involved in the process.
I agree with that. There should be. Well, Teddy Roosevelt said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog.
I love that.
And I should be so committed to the principle of America that you shouldn't have to hold a hot dog in front of me to get me to vote. And it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck when I hear people gripe and complain about the system we're in, but they did not vote. 9 million conservative Christians did not vote in 2008.
Well, there would have been a different result in the election.
It would have been a different result.
Okay? They stayed home.
It would have.
And we can blame the Republican Party for that, by the way. That's why we lost the election. How's that?
That's exactly right.
To be a funny guy.
No, I agree with you.
But it's the truth.
It's exactly what
Can't cover the truth up. Well, most people I talk to simply believe that their voice will change nothing. That is the bottom line. And so they do nothing. They say, let the pros handle it in Washington. And isn't that why we send them to Washington, D.C.? I think if you let these people stay unchecked, I think you've got a real problem here. The power is unchecked. And I think that's what our country stands for more than that. It's what we're about. And so, listen, I think, I like all Americans. I like what we stand for, who we are. I want to make it very inclusive. I don't want to make it, I'm really not a hard act to follow here. I want to get people involved in the process, but I want to encourage, this in such a way that we can. So, anyways, I didn't know where we'd go with this conversation, folks, but we went somewhere with it. But again, at least you know that I didn't say he was the Antichrist, but I do believe he's related. Sorry. Huh? But listen, we're going to take a quick pause here a moment and shout out again to our dear friends, our national sponsorship, Dr. Alfred Bonatti, Bonatti.com. Bottom line is this: I've met a lot of interesting surgeons and doctors over my life. I've never met a man like this. If you're dealing with back pain, neck pain in such a way that you are suffering with this man, people travel in from all over the world, make no mistake about it, to see this man, Alfred Bonatti, Bonatti.com. The work he has done is all patented. He's an incredible man. It's been a blessing to have him here on our platform. We're thrilled to have him. So we'll honor him today and appreciate and do a shout out for him. We were right back with you here with this panel, and we're going to discuss this Constitution business and see what's up with that, understand and honor it. And I think the pastor has a couple of things to say about that as well, since he's been doing this very unique talk. We'll talk more about that just ahead. So Malcolm, I'll be right back.
World-renowned Dr. Bonatti created the Bonatti Spine procedures to minimize surgery, scarring, and recovery. 45,000 procedures have resulted in over 94% satisfaction. Nearly half our patients suffer from failed surgeries at other facilities. Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
Well, we are the people of the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts. Not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. And I love that quote. I've always loved that quote, and I've used it many times. Does anybody know who said that? Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said that, President Lincoln, yeah. And he's right, and this is the checks and balances again with how we need to keep things in those checks and balances in this country. It's Malcolm out here. Welcome back to our show, and our third segment here is going to talk a little bit about the Constitution. I want to welcome back here Pastor Jim Harris. And Pastor Harris is he really is a pastor. I mean, he leads the church service every Sunday for the last 25 years at Riverview Heights Baptist Church. And I know this because I actually drove thousands of miles to come see him. I drove a little bit, somewhat. Probably not thousands of miles, but I'm exaggerating. But it was a long way. So it felt like thousands of miles that day, actually, now that I think about it. But I did get here and I heard his sermon, and you're a very excellent pastor. What I really enjoyed about you is you speak in real terms. So I love you to take the 5 verses of scriptures and really be able to relate those to real life, which I think is important for the Bible. Yes, so not everybody does that, so I appreciate that style as well. And Brent South, United States Army 1st Ranger Battalion, what an incredible story he has, and really appreciate both of these gentlemen being here. I want to dive in now to this Constitution. I want to talk about a little bit more. It's all a learning process for all of us, really, when you think about the Constitution. But, I'm going to play on a few things that Pastor Jim Harris, he does this very unique talk with the founders, and even with the founders, you call it, I believe, yeah. And I really like that. I haven't heard it, but I'm anxious ahead to hear this whole thing, and we'll do a production on this at some point, I'm sure. But you have here, people's law put authority in the people, not the crown or king, which is what Brent, you said in the last segment we got away from, was the crown or the king.
Exactly.
Right. Yet we sometimes treat them like royalty up in Washington somehow or another. I don't know why that is. To me, it's our military that is the royalty, not the clowns in Washington. I think those are the people who need to wash the floor. We ought to get them to do community service. So anyways, that should be part of the derelict of duty business. I guess my point now is, aren't Americans forgetting that the power is in their hands, which is what we've been talking about with the whole voting thing last time, and not the officials that are running the funny farm in Washington, D.C.? And how do we really drive that point across? I mean, this is what I try to do on this platform, Brent. It's what I try to do every day. It's what I put forth to remind people. I put the good fight out there every day. I mean, some people like it. Some people I may be a little too much for, But what do you think?
Well, as far as the government and the Constitution, how it's been
manipulated, stepped on?
To an extreme. And I'm sure Pastor Jim, he'll get more into it, but the beliefs that I have in the Constitution, again, they've been interpreted for 200 years, and they've been changed and modified to a political action group or to a specific group.
To serve their purpose.
To serve their only purpose.
It's an agenda.
It is.
Yeah.
And if there was a needed or wanted change, and it was, I'll play off something that the pastor said in the last segment about when I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Happens to me all the time, brother. And you know, you can relate that to the fact you have too many good things on your mind.
There
Yeah.
you go. I like that. There you go.
It was actually a good point, too.
So, well, picking up on it, listen, and I want to play on this, as you'll come back to that, but our fund saw two extremes of, two government extremes here,
Right.
and I like this, okay? I don't like this, actually, but it's well said at least, okay? And follow me on this, folks. You had anarchy, no law, yeah?
Right.
And tyranny, no, too much law.
Too much law.
Okay? So where's the balance between this, anarchy and tyranny kind of thing? What do you think, Pastor?
Well, the founders were very educated men, and they were readers. They didn't have TV and internet, and they read concerning this thing called People's Law, or Anglo-Saxon law. Hengist and Horsa were two men that brought their people into the British Isles in about 450 AD, and they had this unwritten code called People's Law. And it was unwritten. That turned out to be a weakness at a later point, but Thomas Jefferson was the one at the Constitutional Convention that brought up this matter of People's Law. And visually, the way it would read, in Europe, the king had always had the power, the crown, the aristocrats. And if you look at a pyramid upside down, the bottom of the pyramid was up in Europe. All of the power was concentrated in the top, very little at the bottom where the people were. In People's Law, the pyramid was right side up, and the small point was at the top and the base was at the bottom. And our founders understood there is a balance. You don't have to have tyranny, you don't have to have anarchy. You can have People's Law where there is a balance of the power was given to the population. And the Constitution was a document written from the perspective of the people to the government. We the people are telling you how much government you can inflict us with. And so actually Washington should be scared to death of the American people. But through a series of very deceitful maneuvers, it has been turned around that we're their servants and not the other way around.
So our pyramid has gone the wrong way.
It has gone the wrong way.
I mean, for real.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's where we said it's.
And
well
it
said.
stayed that way,
Yeah.
and it's getting worse and worse. That gap is getting bigger and bigger
It is.
between the people and the government.
Right. There's no simple answer for this, is there?
People have to do what you're doing. Just get out loud. This matter, I'm a pastor and I've been criticized and our church has been criticized for getting involved in this thing.
Wow.
And actually, during the 1700s, there was a group of men called the Black Robe Brigade. They
That's
were
right.
preachers that wore their black clerical robes in the pulpit, and they had their muskets leaning in the corner. And when it came time, if it was during a church service, that they had to defend their families, their community, they did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm a little irritated at pastors that hide in the hole. They want America to be the platform from which they can preach the gospel freely, but they're not willing to get involved in maintaining the freedom of that platform. And I would encourage every pastor. I'm not a scholar of the Constitution, but I'm a student, and I know enough to know it is the document that guarantees what we have now.
Well, we'll call you a scholar of life. Because that's what I look at is we're living life and we're adjusting as we need to the sales, but I think when you're balanced and you have, when you're balanced the way I look at it, and you have the right mission and passion and vision without the greed and the deceit and the deception. I think that's what we're looking for, is those kind of people who,
Well, I think to add on to that, there's not a big solidarity within the United States of America anymore. There's so many groups that's so splintered. The globalization of the world with internet and TV and cell phones and everything else. Right. You go back 50, 60 years, and we were all collecting pantyhose for World War II, or we were collecting steel pots, or rationing things, and we did that as a unit under solidarity. Now there's so many splinter groups. It's North versus South, red versus blue. It's where we've become fragmented.
And that's a great point, and our government has done that. They actually this is how they control the people. In fact, the current administration is brilliant at that. Brilliant campaigner, one of the best ever campaigning. The Obama administration, absolutely.
And I just remember what I was going to talk specifically about.
Well, it's too late. So no, go ahead, Brent.
Well, he was talking about the Catholic or the Christianity view of knowing the laws inside of what's going on. And now within the Constitution, the amendments, and everything up in Washington, these documents are 2,000 pages,
Right.
and you don't know, and it's, oh, well, we're going to add this thing on page 976, and
Oh,
it's
come
going
on. You don't like those
it's going to help me.
2,000-page
Yeah.
bills, bro?
So-
What's in the plan? I don't know, man. Just pass it all.
So again, you get into when you start talking about the Constitution and amendments and laws, and then all of a sudden these bills that are getting, they're taking away more than they're benefiting.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's sometimes said that the U.S. Constitution was and is the second most brilliant document in the history of mankind. Okay? We know what the first document was, so we don't even need to bring that up. Yes, its very existence is the topic of so much talk in political circles today. Now, the founders could not have envisioned everything we're dealing with in today's world. They could not have envisioned, I'm sorry, but they can't. They couldn't have. Should we be more open-minded to revisions to keep this relevant, Pastor Harris, or should it be hands-off for the most part? Do you think? And actually, before you answer that, I'm going to actually have Brent answer that for reasons why. Brent, tell me what the answer is to that. What do you think?
The revisions, I think it needs to be updated, absolutely. But I think it needs to be done by a panel or a group of people that aren't after those political action groups.
I'll do it. I'll be one of the group.
Hey, I will be too.
I'll volunteer.
But let's go back and they were written, or these documents were enacted over 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the relevancy of those things it hasn't diminished, but things have changed. Technology has changed. The world climate has changed. Those are the things that we need to address. They don't need to be interpreted back 200 years ago when someone's saying something about a specific bill or a constitutional amendment.
They take every one of those and they butcher it, politicized
Right.
it. Pastor?
Well, we're looking at a document that was based on 28 basic principles that were centuries old. And from 1607 to 1787, which was 180 years, the colonists were looking for principles to build a government on. And they found, people's law and reading scripture, that there were some very specific principles. As a matter of fact, the colonists didn't initiate the separation from Britain to overthrow an established form of government. They overthrew that government to reset a government that was based on biblical principle. And so they weren't trying to do anything new. They were trying to go back to something that had been in existence for centuries. And those basic principles, the freedom to have a business, for instance, well, you may have the freedom to be a pig farmer in 1787 or an astro engineer in 2015. It doesn't matter what you do, the principles are still, they're static. They don't move and they don't evolve. And there are probably some things that need to be updated.
Right.
There's some ancillary aspects of it.
But the ideology of it, you're saying, principally
yes,
pointed.
those don't
Well, I
change.
think we're all sort of saying the same thing, I
Right.
believe.
Yeah, I think it just, with what I said was, it's to someone else's benefit. Well, we're going to change it. We're going to interpret it this way,
Right,
and it's going to
interpretation.
say this because I think it says that.
That's what they've done with religion. Why not politics?
Right.
It's just the things they say to never talk about in an elevator, which I love to talk about religion and politics in an elevator. But they say, don't do that, man. It's great, man. Especially if it's like 30, 40 floors up. You get some chance
That
to
gives
really
you some time.
let off some
On a
steam.
slow elevator.
It's good. Well, anyway, it's good stuff. Joe, we're going to open up some Q&A here. I want to get a couple of questions from our audience here. And then interesting minute I did nationally. If we have time to play this, I want to play it for you in the point of how we're taking God out of society. But let me go ahead and open it up right now and get a couple questions here. And Paul, you came up to me during break, so I'm going to come over to you. And if you stand up just a moment, please. And if you would, give me, as I knock different things over, give me a question here that you have, please.
It was my understanding that the government was originally founded to protect the people, not to supply their everyday needs. Would you comment on that?
So that it was to protect the people, not to handle every baby step of their life. We're giving them too much. Yeah. What do you think, guys?
I agree completely. It was a basic framework that would protect. The only thing government is designed to do is to protect the freedoms of people. That's it. And they are to live free within the boundaries of the Constitution, but it has encroached on our private.
Well, but Pastor, there's a whole deal to this, and Brent, you know as well, that, if you're just going to give free stuff out, think about the vicious circle we're in. The politicians want the power. We need somebody to watch the program up there, so somebody's got to be in politics, okay? All right. So then we get them all up into office, and then we say, we give you all this power, and then we want your vote, so it's like the free stuff, you know? How do we do the free stuff,
Right.
you know? And so, but if you're going to give me all kinds of free stuff, you're probably going to get my vote.
Exactly.
That's what happens. So
Exactly.
that's like a dog that is just turning in a circle, chasing its tail.
If a government can create a permanent underclass of citizens that depends on the government for their dailies, then they're always going to have position and power.
Right.
Well, that turns into a dictatorship.
Yeah. I
That-
don't think we're far off that page right now.
No.
Especially with the current dude in there. Anyways, let's go right here. Pat, you want to stand, please?
Well, it's kind of like, how can we determine or segregate between those who really do need help
Right.
to get back on their feet and those who are just leeches
Right.
onto the government?
Because any good American wants to help somebody who needs help, and I believe that. So if anybody took me out of context and thought that's not the case, then they would be wrong. I would agree with you, you know, that you really want to help those that are in need. But you know what I'd like to see, and I've said a lot over the years, Pat, is I've said that I'd like to see more of the private side doing more things. I love not-for-profits. I love this when the companies and corporations get involved, you know. And I'd like to see more of the private side doing this and less of government, you know. So I think that's great when people are involved in the process, and that's where we should be. But Pat has a good question again.
Good question.
I think it turns into the government trying to micromanage every single aspect. And each of those programs that have been initiated have been to supplement an action. And you know, as a personal example, I was on welfare when I was a kid. But in California, they had a thing called Greater Avenues for Independence, where they helped you get off of welfare and get a job and a job interview. And you don't see those kind of programs anymore. Now it's just keep throwing money at it. It's like an illness. Well, we'll just keep throwing pain medication.
Well, isn't money the whole key to the whole deal, buddy, right?
Absolutely.
The power and the money, right?
Absolutely.
All right, let me, we've got just a few minutes left in this production, but I want to play this for you because it ran nationally this past week in America. Runs on hundreds of stations in our country. And it was, you know, I find more and more and more that our country is taking God out of everything. They want it off the currency. They want it out of the flag. You can't say the Pledge of Allegiance. It's just constant. And it really is about, we're supposed to have freedom of speech. And, you know, and people have a freedom to be ignorant as well, I think, and they have a freedom not to embrace that. That is their right. I believe everyone has to meet their maker and will answer to God for that, not me. That's why I don't want Washington playing politics. Anyways, this is the nationally syndicated Out Loud Minute. I'm going to play it for you right now, and you'll see what I'm saying.
Out Loud Minute. The Out Loud Minute. Samantha Jones is a New Jersey high school senior who has won her case to keep one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. This is Malcolm Out Loud. The message today from the court is loud and clear, says Eric Rasbach, counsel for the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty. God is not a dirty word. Well, ever since I was little, stated Samantha, I've recited the Pledge of Allegiance with the phrase, under God, because it sums up the values that make our country great. Well, the out loud truth is, I agree with Samantha that our rights don't come from the government, but from a higher power. It's great to see young people get loud on the topic of God. Everyone has the right to remain silent, but they don't have the right to silence everybody else. Kids like me shouldn't be silenced just because, well, some people object to timeless American values, says Samantha. Words to live by, my friends. And you can get the rest of the Out Loud Truth back at malcolmaloud.tv.
You'd be surprised what you can say in a minute, folks. You know that. Quite a bit, actually. So the minute really is a mini story that talks about it. But it is something you see more and more where they're trying to pull that out of a Christian nation, realizing that our fundamentally our beginning was based on as a Christian nation was God, and they forget that as well. Right. Do you find that odd, Brent? I
find it very odd. Is that the country was established on that. And now we've become such a politically correct nation with politics and laws that it is ruining what has been what we were established on.
All right. That's why I developed that whole site. I got to plug it now. It's time to get outloud.com, which is our non-PC portal. So where you can go and get some truth, and it's not just all sugar-coated. Yeah. Right. Go ahead, Pastor.
Well, if you can take people's dependence on God away from them, that leaves you one place to go, and that's the government. And so if I can disconnect you from your accountability to God, then I've got to go somewhere, and that's the whole gravitation is to is to go toward the government.
That is a great point.
That
I've
is.
never heard it put that way, Brent.
I never
Wow.
heard it that. That is
an
pretty.
excellent point. So there's the candy they're giving them, obviously,
exactly.
for all of this, and then pull that away from you, and before you know it, whee!
Exactly.
Who was behind that curtain? Was it the Wizard of
yeah.
Oz, or was it somebody else? I don't know. In any event, so my friends, freedom isn't free, and as you can see, there's a lot to it. Vote in and your political process, and understand it again and appreciate our Constitution. But again, nothing is greater, I think, the sacrifice of the men and women who make up the United States military. There are many reasons why this is the greatest country in the world. And anybody who doesn't think that obviously isn't looking at all the facts and the data. There's no question in my mind that it's an incredible place to be, and we need to all appreciate that, embrace it, and work harder to make it a better country for everybody, for our kids and the next all these generations coming. I don't think we're doing that enough today. People just feel it's hooray for me and the hell with everybody, and that's the wrong attitude to have today.
It is.
So, again, Brent South. Again, thank you, Brent, for your service and your dedication to this country. Appreciate it very much, and you being here, brother.
Thank you.
And Pastor Jim Harris as well. And I really like you, by the way. So
Thank you,
you really have been a good shining spot for me, and I really am blessed to have ran across your path, and thanks for that and being with me. I'm really super guy here, and a pastor not very much unlike what I grew up with as a young man in the church. And I appreciate that very much. So again, thank you for being with me here. It's Malcolm Out Loud. Remember, get involved, get loud.